Welcome to the Big Swing Podcast, the home of inspiring behind-the-scenes business stories from the world's leading content creators. My name's Sam Barcroft, and I started my media company back in 2003 from my bedroom in Tottenham. After 16 years, I sold it and settled into my happy ever after, helping out other entrepreneurs to scale their businesses. And now I've founded Creativille to share their insights with you. So subscribe to my newsletter at creativille.co and join me here on the Big Swing Podcast as every week I ask a super producer to reveal the 3 most important decisions they've made in their quest for success. And stick around to the end when I'll let you in on my personal top takeaway from today's very special guest. This is the Big Swing. Now this week is a little bit special. We're changing up the format of the show. I've been released from my legal shackles, and so I can freely share with you some of my own big swings I took whilst I was growing Barcroft Studios. Of course, I didn't do it on my own. There was an amazing team of people that helped make Barcroft the success it grew into. And 2 of my key lieutenants were the company's Chief Operating Officer Casper Norman and Chief Creative Officer Alex Morris. And I'm delighted that Alex has agreed to join me today and compare each of our own 3 big swings to see if the memory of our adventure at Barcroft really is rosier than the reality. Neither of us knows the other's big swings. I think it's fascinating to see where our perspectives align and where they differ. First, a little bit of background. I founded Barcroft Media, as it then was, in 2003 off the back of a career as a photo editor for a number of UK tabloids. It was a photo agency that connected the dots between photographers around the world and Fleet Street. At the time, other than finding a way to support my young family, my dream was to break the world's biggest news stories. And by 2008, we'd broken quite a few. Finally, we'd grown big enough for me to hire exceptional leaders to help run our digital content business. Alex was the director of pictures at Closer magazine, and we'd worked together a lot on a number of projects before I had the opportunity to poach him. Once I'd convinced him to join us, I was super excited to have Alex on board, but probably a little bit nervous about how he would handle the transition from working in the commercial safety of an established publishing giant to the hand-to-mouth hustle of a scrappy startup. So it's like financial crash.
Yeah.
You've come out of this posh building on Shaftesbury Avenue in West 1 in London's West End. You've kind of come to this little office above a Tesco Express on Southgate Road in Hackney. You've got a handful of weird and wonderful people in there.
Yeah.
And if we didn't come up with exclusives, we didn't get paid.
Yeah. That was the bit that I learned a lot in that first period, because I didn't have that exact direct relationship with the revenue as you do with your own business, right? Or with a business that's smaller, or a business that you're more connected to the people. Because if we had a quiet day, that was terrible. Because a quiet day meant no money that day. And I remember serious and sort of stressful times of we've had a bad week, and a bad week was really meant something,
Yeah, and you have no momentum in a small business like that, because you basically are living hand to mouth on a day by day. And it was a relief for me to get somebody into the business who gave us that big next level of energy, and who had the editorial ideas to kind of help bridge the gaps in my exhaustion, basically, of running a hand to mouth business. Despite an ambition to diversify, our main revenue still came from chasing down breaking news stories and supplying exclusive pictures to our insatiable news publisher clients. Traditionally, photo agencies covered a specific patch. Some covered war and conflict, others celebrity, sport or local news, but we didn't have that. Instead, we stayed across it all, but targeted exclusive, high-value stories with a unique angle, which the press just couldn't say no to.
What it allowed us to do was to think slightly differently and find the things on the edges. So when a breaking, hard news story would happen, we'd be the first people to get the collect pictures of the person's husband, wife, girlfriend, the picture of the school they went to, or whatever it might be, the stuff that was around the story that added the color and became that kind of exclusive element. And I learned so much during that period about the value of having something that no one else has. And I think that seems obvious, because obviously that's valuable, but you really see it play out when you've got that, like I say, that link to the commercial.
I suppose the Madonna thing that happened just before you turned up probably was one of those first ones. So we sent a team to Malawi because there was a rumor that she might be adopting a child. So we sent a team over from the UK who linked up with some local fixers, and we basically went and found the family of the child that she'd just adopted, and found out the whole circumstances around that, and that became a massive global exclusive. And I think when you came into the business, instead of those things happening once every now and then, we had the kind of editorial leadership capacity to be able to do that more and more often and build a reputation around
I think that Madonna thing's an important one, because I think that approach set a bit of a blueprint for kind of how you can operate globally as a small East London based business, to be able to do global content in a really exclusive manner was quite unusual at the time. And it's what led the kind of opportunity to grow the production company, because the production company came from those exclusive properties.
So that's a really good segue into my first big swing. My first big swing when you joined the business was setting up Barcroft Productions, which happened in 2010, which made sense at the time. But now I look back on it and I think that was quite a big deal, because we'd been co-producing documentaries with other producers for a while, and we'd find a brilliant exclusive, and then we'd, as well as licensing it to newspapers and magazines, we'd find a way to partner with a production company who would then go and sell it as a documentary. And then we'd help that company to actually deliver the film.
And promote it through our press agency. I think that was interesting, because it was where we first started this, something that we took right through the business, which is these kind of virtuous circles where you find the story and then you kind of develop it into different properties, and then at the end of it, you're promoting the properties that you've created.
Yeah, we had a little secret sauce, which was newspapers were really interested in big new documentaries. And obviously, if we'd created that documentary and made it, we could give the newspaper, with the agreement of the TV companies, a big exclusive about what this documentary was coming out and the great story in it. So it did work really well as a kind of an extra reason for broadcasters to commission us as co-producing partners. And we did a lot of that from 2008 to 2010-ish. And essentially, we realized that we weren't getting the better part of the deal, which was kind of frustrating. We'd be going out creating these brilliant documentaries with other producers, and then they would end up getting 90% of the money because they were the ones that were contracted, and we'd just get a little bit of money for having come up with the idea and made sure the access was in place and promoted it. And so after doing probably 17 or 18 films and episodes, we kind of took the decision, right, we're going to have to do this ourselves. And that was quite a moment, really. We hired Casper Norman, who was our other business partner, and he came in to run that part of the business, really. It felt quite scary at the beginning, because although we didn't have a massive cost base, it was a real shift of comfort zone.
The thing that I found hardest about that time, in the press world, we were well respected. We knew everyone. We had lots of contacts. We were well liked. In the TV world, we didn't have any of that, you know, and actually all that press stuff counted against us somewhat. My memory is very much the time of the sort of the TV world was not particularly keen on us, because the way that we operated, which was so different to the TV, you know, that difference wasn't seen as a benefit or a virtue. It was seen as maybe they're not all that, they don't really know what they're doing. And that was quite hard. And I always felt like we had to fight so much harder to prove ourselves.
It was horrible out. I mean, I was out kind of desperately trying to get meetings with broadcasters to take in these, what I thought were brilliant documentary ideas, to see them. And I remember having to try and get appointments with the assistant at Channel 4 and places like that, and being almost laughed out the room again and again. I'd had this crazy thing where we'd go to lunch with an editor of a national newspaper.
We could get access to anybody on Fleet Street.
That's right, and like you'd come out of Nobu, where you'd been having a lunch with, you know, someone particularly important in the world of press and entertainment, and then you'd go to like Horseferry Road with Channel 4's headquarters, and you'd see somebody who's like 15 minutes late. And I remember one commissioner just saying, look, it's not worth you pitching projects because I'm not going to give you any work. And I was like, well, you haven't even heard the idea.
No, I think about that often, in that nowadays you have to be a diversified media business to work and survive. We were trying to become a diversified media business because our traditional business models were being challenged by changes in the way that newspapers operated and websites and so on and so forth. And so we were kind of diversifying our business, and that was really seen as a negative at the time. Other very much you're supposed to stay in your lane, and I'd always found that quite tough. And in my career, in the very first place, I'd always aspired to go into TV, and the reason I didn't is because I had to work for free, and I couldn't afford to work for free, and I was living like a tramp. Basically, I lived in Green Lanes for free because it had a cockroach infestation, to go and work at the BBC for free, and I couldn't afford to buy lunch. And I was jumping the tube, and I did that for 2 weeks and thought, I don't think I can do this. And whereas when I went into the press world, I was being paid. I was a trainee and doing work experience, but I'd always get some money out of it. And it was really interesting, us trying to break back into TV. Yeah. But it was really tough sort of being rejected without what felt like a good reason. Yes, we were not experts in TV, and yes, we had a lot to learn. But just that kind of, at least listen to the idea.
To get a television project off the ground, broadcasters would often want to see the footage that proved our exclusive access to a story. So we quickly got into the habit of filming interviews whenever we did a photo shoot. So when Amy Winehouse tragically died, we realised that we were the only company that had an in-depth exclusive interview with her estranged husband, Blake Fielder Civil. We also knew that no one else could record with him because he was locked up in prison. Then all of a sudden we're in this situation where we've got kind of the exclusive interview that everybody's wanted. Yeah. And I remember talking to Michelle Chappell at Channel 5, who said, look, if you can get a documentary on air within a week, we'll have it. Yeah. And then just being in this remarkable situation where we've just set up a production company and we've been asked to do one of the hardest things in television, which is a fast turnaround documentary. And I just remember the next 7 days of my life being absolutely ridiculously stressful.
Yeah, it was a mad time. So the day that she died was the day that my first child was due. And I was at the cricket.
As you do when you're waiting for your child.
Which was one of those weird days. Anyway, I remember it very clearly. And then he was born when I can't remember if we just, what the time frame was. He was 2 weeks late. So we'd either just won the commission.
It had just gone out probably.
Or it had just gone out. Or I can't remember. It was such a bonkers time for me because it was like child, this, and then keeping the wheels on everything else, right? Because it was so transformative if we got it right. But at the same time, it wasn't going to pay the wages every day.
Yeah, I just remember staying up all night for 2 days in a row, sleeping on floors, having the director quit on the 6th day, sat at 4 o'clock in the morning on the stairs of the post house saying, I'm not doing this anymore. The commissioner having to come in and help us edit the last 2 days. Yeah. Shilling sending us letters from Winehouse's parents saying, you can't put this documentary out. Like all of it happening at once. It was absolutely nuts. So I remember being on the phone crying to my mum, I think on day 6.5, just going, what have I done?
And also we didn't really know what we were doing in terms of making telly in a deep way.
I remember going into the edit on the last day and I just went, right, lose all that bit. And they were like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, we're 4 minutes short. But the great thing about it was the documentary went out and it rated really, really well for Channel 5. And they put it up as their choice for Documentary of the Year for Broadcast Awards. So it's a really brilliant principle that I hold to even now, which is if you want to get into a new marketplace as a business, you have to do something superlative to break in. You just can't just show up. And this is what we got so wrong, was assuming that we could just go into this mature business of television and they'd welcome us with open arms. Like, that's how I felt. But the reality is you only get into a new business space, really, if you bring something 10 times better, 10 times more impactful. And I think we were busy from that point onwards at Barcroft Production. I don't think we really had a break after that. That literally was the birth of our company, that film, of that part of the business, which became half of our revenues. After loads of knockbacks, a huge slice of luck, and a ball-breakingly hard week, my first big swing, setting up Barcroft Productions, our TV division, had paid off. Now it's time to find out what Alex chose as his first big swing.
The first swing that I kind of thought of as being key was when we committed to doing video every single day.
Oh, that's my second big swing.
I did wonder if you picked that. I did wonder because it was, my memory of it is that it was around 2012. Maybe 2011, 2012.
It was around that time, maybe a little bit later. Before we made the huge decision to upload our own videos to YouTube, we'd been filming interviews during our photo shoots, and Alex was trying to sell the footage to TV shows.
I have a real memory of being in New York. I used to go out and do these meetings, drumming the streets to try and get magazine shows to be a client to buy video of us. And it was really hard because you go to these big New York offices and you'd see all these random people and they'd never heard of us. They all called us Barcroft Media. It was exciting, bit soul destroying. It was like a mixture of the two things. And one of those trips I was out there around 2010, we had a video from Indonesia of the smoking baby.
Of course.
And he was about 18 months and he smoked 20, 30 fags a day. And it was this mad video. And I'd just been doing all these meetings and we got this video, this story, and it was in the press. I was staying in a probably the shittest hotel I've ever stayed in.
And we stayed in some bad ones.
It was horrific. So I hadn't had any sleep and I was sort of half awake, tossing and turning. At 4 a.m, my phone started ringing off the hook. It was just lucky timing. All these people I've been seeing in New York were like, oh, you've got that story. So as a result of that, we were filming more video because we had clients. And I remember you were quite focused on us producing and cutting them. And we didn't have a clue how to do it.
It was hilarious. Yeah,
like we literally
terrible.
had no idea how to do it. And I remember you saying, I think we should try and do one video a day. And I mean, honestly, I felt it would be impossible. I didn't feel that we needed to get involved in the creative output of the video.
Because we were licensing footage, weren't we?
So, we were licensing footage. We never edited any of it. We just, this is a great story. Let's sell the rushes to CNN and ABC and CBS and all of that sort of stuff.
So it was really funny because I remember that. And we tried to train our stills photographers to shoot video. That wasn't great.
We tried to train our picture editors to edit video. It was really difficult. It was
pretty tough.
The thing that changed it, part of it was having YouTube as an outlet. We could actually publish something ourselves. But it was more the workflow that we found so backbreaking and difficult and complicated. And I remember we hired someone, an edit producer, for 6 weeks to help us.
Kylie.
She helped us.
So Kylie was a senior edit producer on I'm a Celebrity. And we basically realized that we didn't understand the workflow we needed.
And all those things were quite big gambles at the time because we didn't have loads of money for staff. So spending a chunk of money on someone to come in.
And she was like $6,000 for 4 weeks. And we was like,
it was a big thing to do. When I was thinking about these big swings, they're never just one thing. They're a sequence of things. So deciding to do the video a day led on to other decisions we had to make, like, were we going to hire people? Were we going to buy kit? Were we going to, what were we going to do? Were we going to bring in someone like Kylie to help us get that expertise?
And it worked.
It
was amazing.
It was amazing.
So the team in the US came up with this brilliant story of a man in Canada called Mark Dumas who had a pet polar bear that he went swimming with in his swimming pool in Canada. And that was a classic story for us. So we were like, go and do it. Amazing.
Yeah. I remember we went into the Sun, you and me, and sold it to them in person because they were so excited to see it.
Yeah. And when we were doing all this kind of learning how to produce video, we got Jem Wiley, the features editor, who's Canadian.
That's right.
To voice it. And we made like a 1:30. It licensed around the world, didn't it? And it did really well for us. And then we put it on YouTube with music on it because we thought, well, no one can nick the footage if it's covered in music and it's got a voiceover, and put a big logo on it. And then it kind of started ticking up views, didn't it, on YouTube?
It became our first experience of something going viral.
Yeah.
When that term going viral was a really new term.
Yeah.
There'd only really been Charlie Bit My Finger. That was the first video that I remember people talking about as a viral video.
Yeah.
And then this became a viral video, and it was in the Google Zeitgeist film of 2012.
And that was the big thing because the guy from Google just emailed you and said, hey, we want to use your video.
And it was alongside Obama's inauguration. I remember that was in there. Felix Baumgartner jumping from space, the polar bear man.
London Olympics 2012. And there was a bloke swimming with a polar bear for about 30 milliseconds in the video. And they wanted it for free, which I thought was a piss take. But also, it just got millions and millions and millions of views. And then we met with Rightster, didn't we? Rightster were the kind of leading multi-channel network in the UK at that time. And they said, we'll do a deal with you, but you're going to have to do a new video every day because that's what the algorithm loves and that's what's going to superpower you. And that was when we had to take the decision of whether we were going to commit or not, right? And it did feel like a mega big swing.
Oh, it really was tough because, again, it was keeping the wheels on because that wasn't going to make us any money now at that time.
Yeah.
And it didn't make us any money for several years necessarily directly, although it did indirectly. It felt like it was a very difficult time for us as a business generally like financially, we had staff issues, we had fraud issues.
Yeah.
Like it was a problem. And in amongst all of the noise of the day to day, it almost felt like a thing we could do without. But it turned out to be the thing that was one of the most transformative things that we did, because it ended up changing the trajectory of the business. Because my memory is, we were trying to be press agency moving into TV production company. I don't think we were saying, let's be a digital content network. Let's be a digital social publisher. Facebook was not a video environment. And actually, the first places we made money on video in digital were MSN and Yahoo. So it was very much like a swing that we didn't know where it was going to take us, I suppose. But I think it was such an important thing to do something new, something different. It really showed that, again, diversifying what we were doing, even if we weren't sure where that would take us, would be impactful.
So, Alex's first big swing and my second big swing were the same. Taking that gamble to put free video up every day on YouTube with no idea of how or when that would bring money back into the business. It's time for Alex to catch up and tell us his second big swing.
I realised in retrospect how much of a big swing it was, whereas at the time I'm not sure I did. Moving office.
Okay, right.
So it sounds like a very sort of just a structural thing to do. We need a new office. Let's move to a new office. But if you think back to 2013 when we did that, it was one of the toughest things we ever did as a business. And it was probably the most scary thing we ever did. So we were in Southgate Road above a Tesco in an office that in the summer was the hottest place I've ever been in my life. Like never in anywhere in the world have I been in anywhere as hot as that room.
And it even had a hotter room inside it.
Like, it did. It had like a hot box inside the room.
It's like something out of a prisoner of war camp in the 40s.
It was unbelievable. And we were full. We were absolutely full. There was no seating space. There weren't enough toilets. And everyone was finding it tough. And I think it was probably affecting morale a little bit. I don't know if we've noticed that at the time, but in retrospect, it was, you would arrive at work, it was fucking chaos because it was just like this mad little space. And then we found the office on Kingsland Road and it was maybe 3 times the size of what we needed. And it just felt terrifying doing that. We sublet a little bit of it to a guy in his company for a few weeks who did a runner. Anyway, I guess the reason why I think it's such a big swing was that it's changed our whole mindset from a kind of hold on to what we've got mentality to a real growth mindset, because we suddenly had this big office. Everyone was excited. It was quite a cool looking space, but just the scale of it, the fact that it was too big and we were just one little quarter in there and there's all this open space and we had to fill it.
I remember being super nervous about moving in there because you're committing hundreds of thousands of pounds. I think we decided to build some edits in there.
That's right, yeah.
That was like 6 figures.
But all of that stuff was, again, transformative for us because we had our own edit suites. Previously, we had the hot box, which was an edit suite, come meeting room, come whatever else. We didn't really have anywhere else to cut other than just out in the room, which is very difficult for editors with all the hubbub around them.
Yeah.
So it forced our hand to be more ambitious.
It's kind of like the analogy of a pet shark, isn't it? Like if you put a pet shark in it will grow to the extent of the aquarium that you put it in, and we kind of basically quadrupled the size of our aquarium, and then we went in there and it did kind of make us grow to fill that space,
really
didn't it? Yeah.
The first time that was full, I remember standing there with Casper and I remember both of us feeling so uplifted, and it felt like, okay, we're no longer like this little band of brothers fighting every day. We're now a company.
And I also think that it's when our business became a community as well.
Yeah.
Because up until then, there'd been a couple of us really duking it out at that top level, and then everybody else was very flat, and then when we moved there, it was like, okay, that person's now seeing that person. And like all these people are going out partying together every night. And it really
a culture
became
evolved.
A culture.
And it really shows that taking that choice, taking that swing of, oh my God, we're going to commit to this thing that's quite scary. It's quite expensive. But it's amazing the power that I think previously I've probably, even at the time, I don't think I realized the value of what your workspace can do for the team. And now you can see now why so many businesses really care about the office space an awful lot. And actually, young people going into the media industry, that's one of the things that will sway them. Like, is the office cool? Is the office nice?
Being in the same room is almost.
I don't know how we would have
way.
grown our business if we weren't in the same room. When
So that was the stakes of that swing, wasn't it? If we hadn't have done it, we would have probably wouldn't have grown. But it didn't feel like that at the time.
No.
It kind of felt like a necessary pain in the butt. By 2016, 8 years after Alex had joined the company, we'd built 3 parts to the business. An agenda-setting news and picture agency, which was tightly run but only made a little bit of money, a TV production company, which wasn't growing as quickly as we wanted, and an online video business, which was getting loads of views but costing us money. Remember, this is before platforms were actually sharing their revenue with creators. It was an exhausting slog running a mature company in startup mode for so long. And even though I didn't want to, we knew it was time to go out and raise money. And that was my third big swing.
So we came very close to doing a deal that fell apart on the day of your birthday party.
Might have been my 40th.
Yeah. And I was driving to your house.
Yeah.
And I got a call from our estate agent saying our house sale and purchase had collapsed. And then an hour later, I got a call saying the deal had collapsed. It was really, and it was like, oh, party time.
Yeah, let's all go and party. I do remember, it's so funny you say that because it's been the first big party I'd ever had in my life at my house in the countryside where no one had really been before.
Yeah.
And
also loads of all our colleagues came.
It was brilliant. It was a great party, but I remember the day, and now you say it, we had a few inquiries. Would you be interested in selling your business? And we knew our numbers weren't going well. And we hired an investment bank eventually to run a process, a fundraising process. And it was quite stressful because all of a sudden we'd been hoping that just to get some money from someone and do a deal with one person that one of these suitors, and then they explain that you kind of really, to do it properly, you need to go to the whole market and talk to everyone that might want to give you money, because then you'll get the best deal. Makes sense on a logical basis, but actually that meant we had to do dozens of presentations to all these different businesses that were mildly interested in giving us money. And that was on top of a day job that was already 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
It was very intense.
And we had these 3 bids come in, because that's what happens. You do all these presentations and then people put in bids, and they were all for a lot of money. They were from 3 different partners, and we were sat there with one of the key partners didn't even bother putting in a bid, but we knew they were still interested. So it was a mess. So what happened was we had all these businesses pitching in for us, offering us huge amounts of money for our business. And actually we just wanted to raise when we started we just wanted some money to keep going. And then all of a sudden we had hedge funds, we had big news media players, we had everybody wanting to invest in our business. We had 3 offers, all for the same amount of money. And then what it transpired, I think, was that they were all over-offered. And so all the deals fell apart because the boards of the relative companies wouldn't sign off the M&A.
It was also a weird time in the digital industry in that we were early in it. That was quite sexy and exciting for some legacy businesses, but the business models in social weren't there.
No.
We weren't a big established production company, so we didn't have that to fall back on, and we were doing something that was innovative and exciting, and some businesses got excited about that, but then when it came down to it, I think it was hard for them to make the numbers work.
They couldn't, because there was no advertising income to speak of yet, and they were just watching us growing, but not at a crazy 10x a year pace. And it was frustrating because we'd wanted to raise when we went into it, and the bankers had said, know what you want out of this. If you want to raise, let's go out and raise. If you want to sell, let's go out and sell. But we kind of got, I think, flattered by all these people suggesting these huge amounts of money to sell the business, and we were like, well, if they're going to give us that money, let's do it. And it fell through. And I remember we just had to stop because we'd been doing our day jobs, flying around the world trying to sell, and we'd been selling the business. Like, I was completely exhausted. I'd got this letter from David, who was the CEO of Channel 4, who'd loved our business and who'd pulled out halfway through because they'd said the numbers didn't work for them anymore. And he'd sent me this lovely letter saying, look, we loved your business. We loved hanging out with you. we'd be really, really interested in, continuing the conversation if the deal falls apart later down the line. Super prescient, right? Because he figured out that like this deal probably wasn't going to happen because it got too inflated. And then I had News UK on the other side, taking me for breakfast with Rupert Murdoch. He's showing me around the Baby Shard, asking me what I thought of The Office and how I'd change it and all this kind of stuff. And actually, I think we all sat down and just thought we actually could do with a small raise to just keep us going.
What we really needed at the time was money to hire staff.
And so we did a deal with Channel 4, who gave us the money we needed to keep going for a couple of years. And that was a really difficult process because they didn't understand the way our business worked.
Yeah. I guess it's all a bit bittersweet, that stuff. We needed to do it. We didn't really have a choice. But and in some ways, it obviously opened stuff up for us, but it created a whole new level of challenges as well.
Because we had to babysit like this uneducated investor who knew everything about television, but nothing about digital.
So Channel 4, whose commissioners often wouldn't give us the time of day when we were starting out, ended up investing in our business, only for us to have to educate them about the investment they'd just made in the digital ecosystem. It's funny how things turn out. At the same time, the raise felt like a necessary burden, something we had to do to take Barcroft to the next level. But as with everything, there were silver linings.
At the time, I couldn't see these positives, but in retrospect, it helped us learn how to communicate our business better. Because I think up until that point, we'd found it quite hard to describe our business. And we learned how to financially report our business better, for external eyes, which became hugely valuable when we entered the next process around selling the business. So I think there were lots of good things we got out of it. It just was a very hard.
It was just painful, wasn't it, going through it at the time? Yeah. And I agree with you. It's growing pains. And I do think that one of the things that we got from that whole process, once it was completed and once we had the money, we hired some great managers.
Yeah.
We got that proper level of understanding of what a medium-sized business needed to look like, because we had to put those structures in place. So it was awesome in lots of ways. And we told them that the Facebook revenue was coming and the Snapchat revenue was coming, and I think they didn't believe us. And so when it did, it was just such a relief, wasn't it? When it all of a sudden, after...
2017 was the Facebook money, and then 2018 was the Snapchat money.
Yeah.
And, revenue and deals. And I think, all that was when all that hard work of the previous kind of 4 years in digital video production and distribution and audience building and learnings, that's when that really started to pay off.
Alex's final big swing is about our unique operating model at Barcroft. While our short-form online content and our long-form TV films were now both making money, we started to perfect the art of having a win on YouTube lead directly to an even bigger victory in TV.
The way our business used to work, which was so wonderful and organic, was we'd have a weekly editorial conference that you used to run. And I remember the discussion. Things seem to be getting a bit heated in America again. We should go and see what's happening with race relations and everything. And talking to our New York office and saying, why don't you see if you can go and see the KKK? And I remember Liam kind of making that happen and going and saying, they've invited us down for a weekend. And basically they had this big, horrible racist barbecue for the weekend, which they went and filmed.
And a cake sale, which was just mental.
Yeah, obviously you have your KKK cake sale for that diversified revenue stream. And what was so fascinating about that was, all the health and safety challenges aside, that video was proper, and people weren't going and doing that very often. It was probably only us and Vice that would ever go and try and do anything like that. And they did put their hoods on and they did say terrible things, and it was happening, and we went and documented it. And to your point, we went to people and said, we've got access to the Klan. They are doing stuff. It's hotting up again in America. And people were like, they all found 1,000,001 excuses as to why they wouldn't be interested. So I remember sitting down with Lucy Levergle, who was then of Channel 4, Fact 10, and now at Netflix as a commissioner, and showing her the film. Because I'd pitched a few things, she wasn't that interested in any of them. And she said, how's your YouTube channel doing? You've got a YouTube channel, haven't you? And I was like, yeah. I said, it's going really well. We're getting like huge views. And she said, what's done well recently? I said, oh, well, we went and did this weekend with the KKK. She was like, no way, can I see it? And I literally brought my laptop out and played her the video.
Yeah.
And she was like, that's amazing. What are people saying about it? And I just scrolled through the comments and she could read what people felt about this film.
Yeah.
And she was like, could you make that for me as an hour? And I was like, yeah, of course, we've still got the access. Yeah. And she was like, right, we're going to make it, definitely. And it was one of those rare moments these days where you actually get and you kind of sell it in the room. Yeah. And it was a brilliant film that got made, you know, and I think was really important. I think it was the best rated BAME show for BAME audiences that year. And it was a brilliant example of why you're right. You know, our big swing was being brave enough, I think, to have faith in our own kind
and
of
persevere
processes.
with that link, because I can say at the beginning, linking short form to long form as a kind of structural or creative process was a black mark. It was considered low value, low rent, low quality, and didn't really speak to our creative potential from a client perspective. But actually, it then became one of our strongest suits.
And what do you think would have happened if we hadn't have done that, if we'd kind of separated the two businesses?
Maybe if we'd set up if we were of television backgrounds and we'd set up a conventional TV production company, we would have developed shows in a different type of way. But as the business that we were, what we realized, I think, what we wouldn't have done if we hadn't brought it together is maximize the access that we got through short form to build into long form opportunities. And I think we wouldn't have had as many projects if we hadn't brought them together. And also, as digital and social content, the value of it grew in reputation, it started to become a winning point for us. And I remember when we were selling the business, the fact that we could show that we monetized our development in short form to be able to test it and get that audience data and revenue and then build it into long form became a real virtue. So I think again it gave us something unique and something different.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because we built a lot of things on gut feel, and once that Facebook money started turning on and the Snapchat money started coming through, it was pretty obvious that we had a golden chance to sell the business, right? Because our thesis had paid off. All of a sudden, all this content we've been fully funding out of our own money for all those years became highly valuable and was throwing off huge CPMs and getting loads of money from these new video platforms. So we decided to go to market. Part of that process is you have to do this big presentation deck of what you've done and why your business is valuable and why someone would want to buy it. And all of those principles that you've just been talking about from your third swing, that was the main thesis of why our business was unique, wasn't it?
And so, Barcroft Media, which was born in my spare bedroom back in 2003, was now the multi-award winning content agency and production company Barcroft Studios. And in 2019, we were bought by digital media giant Future plc for over £23 million in cash and shares. Before we find out which swing Alex and I each thought was the most impactful, I want to tell you about next week's show. John McKenna is the founder and CEO of the Noah Media Group and a pioneer of premium sports documentaries. John and his team have made some of the biggest sports films of recent times, profiling the likes of Arsene Wenger for Amazon Prime, Jack Charlton for the BBC, and Bobby Robson for Netflix. But it's not just the award-winning content that excites me. Noah Media's unique approach to financing their work and their fresh take on the TV industry are game-changing. So, please subscribe to our podcast to make sure you don't miss out on my conversation with John. Now, back to the story of Barcroft Studios. My three big swings were: number 1, setting up the TV production company; number 2, committing to putting one video a day online; and number 3, going out to raise money. And Alex's swings were: number 1, putting a video a day online; number 2, moving to a bigger and less hot office; and then number 3, perfecting the art of leveraging our short form videos into long form TV series. But which swing did Alex think was the most impactful?
I think probably the first one, which you also put down, the doing a video a day. I mean, it's very hard to say which is the most impactful because you just don't know. I genuinely don't know. Maybe moving office would be more impactful, or maybe doing the deal with Channel 4 would be more. I don't know. But certainly for me personally, that felt like it changed the trajectory that I was on. It made us video producers, because we were really, if we were honest about it, we were video creators that then sold it to other people to produce something out of it, you know.
Yeah. We're news gathering, really.
Yeah, we were
weren't
news gathering, yeah. And so I feel like retrospectively, that probably changed the trajectory of my mentality. So yeah, that one feels close to my heart in that sense.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I put down setting up Barcroft Productions, our TV arm, which I think was mega for the business, because it meant that we had this solid, once we'd got it up and running, we had these, when you sell a TV show, it's hundreds of thousands every time you do a deal, and goes up into the millions for series. And so it became this kind of quite substantial way of earning money, and very high kudos, you know.
The kudos thing, you know, and why I think there's a really strong argument that would be also the most important, because it changed the way that people looked at us, and the kudos piece of it, the kind of the brand equity that we got from that had such a big impact on changing the business. You know, all that kudos that we had in news world didn't count for anything when that world started to diminish.
It's funny, my elderly uncle, you know, when I saw him for a family birthday the other week, still talks about the only BBC Two documentary I ever made. You know, forgets about everything else.
The dinosaurs died.
The dinosaurs died, which was £1 million, you know, special that came out of news gathering, really, rather than it came out of making shows. But it was an absolute nightmare to make, but something I was very proud of as a project. But it's funny that kudos piece and that kind of stability of the money came from that TV production side of things. So I think on that basis, I'm going to say that was the biggest swing for me, because although going to 5 videos a week, probably what eventually meant we could sell our business, if we hadn't done Barcroft Productions, I don't think that the rest of it would have been able to follow.
It's really nice to think about it in retrospect, in hindsight, because when you're in it, you're just in it. And you know, I was thinking about big swings and big things and choices and decisions and mistakes and all of that. And they're so connected to my personal life too, because like it's all intertwined for a while and you can't separate those things out. Whereas with retrospect, it's very nice to be able to kind of pick it apart.
Yeah, it's great to hang out again and to talk about all those amazing
definitely.
moments. And thanks for your brilliant big swings.
Thank you.
So that was the chat between me and Alex, recorded at Spirit Studios towards the end of last year. And it's quite an emotional listen back for me, because when you've invested 20 years into building a business and you finally leave it, there's a lot of old memories and just such a lot of my personality really wrapped up in overcoming all those challenges. And the main takeaway from my conversation with Alex is a pretty simple one, which is there's nothing more valuable than wonderful partners in business and in life, of course. My amazing wife, Faith, was with me all the way through the Barcroft Studios experience, through thick and thin. And so, of course, owe her a debt of gratitude that I'll probably never be able to repay. But with Casper, my business partner, and Alex, my other business partner, it's so comforting to have people alongside you that you know are just as committed and just as excited about what you're doing as you are. And Alex was a remarkable person to share all those intense moments with. He was so kind, so enthusiastic, so talented, so eloquent, you know. So it hasn't always been that way. You know, I've tried business partnerships that haven't worked out very well over time, but I don't think our business would have been anywhere near as brilliant without Casper and Alex and Faith alongside, making sure that we were on the right path and taking the blows and keeping us pressing forward in better and better ways. So listening back to that, all I feel is deep gratitude and humility for Alex, Casper and Faith as amazing business partners in such a thrilling, terrible, wonderful, exhausting adventure. I couldn't have had better people with me. And if you do find somebody that cares about as much as your business as you do, who's a kind person and who's good and strong, then
take the plunge. Make sure you write the legals down properly. Make sure everybody understands what it is that's expected of them. We didn't always get that right. I certainly didn't. But there's nothing better than a great partner. Thank you, Al. Don't think I could say that enough. Thank you, Casper. Thank you, Faith. And thank you for listening to the Big Swing podcast from Creatorville. The Big Swing podcast is produced in association with the amazing Spirit Studios. Our executive producer is Fred Casella. Our sound designer is Will Horrocks. And The Big Swing was created by me, Sam Barcroft.